All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So, thank you guys for coming tonight. Uh, First, we will have, as you might know, Cindy Johnson will be presenting to us. She is a Purdue Engineering Student Council alumni, and she's going to give us a quick talk as well as a Q&A on how to prepare for a career fair, follow-up techniques, and just being prepared in general. So, with that, I'll pass it over to Cindy.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. So we've got a small group here. This is perfect. So what we'll do is we'll kind of go through. We want to be a little bit interactive. So if you have questions, we'll stop throughout it. But I'll go ahead and share my screen with you all really quickly here. All right. Okay, so first, a little bit about me. Like Ray said, I am a Engineering Student Council alumni. So obviously I went to Purdue. I got my bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. While on campus, I was involved in a lot of different things. There was Freak Life. I worked at the admissions office, of course, the student council, all of that good stuff. And I hold Purdue very close and very tight in my heart. Past that, I had some internships. I worked with UPS Customer Solutions. I worked with UPS HR, and ultimately I loved it so much. I ended up going full-time and chose to go full-time with them again in the UPS Customer Solutions group. So I currently work out of Atlanta, Georgia, though I'm actually up in Louisville, Kentucky right now, helping with vaccine distribution. So I've had a lot of different opportunities, and you all will too. Your engineering degree is going to take you really far, and it's going to open a lot of doors for you. I've been in everything from talent management through healthcare all the way to a consulting customer facing role. So that's a little bit about me. But what we're here to talk about today, of course, is how to succeed at a career fair. That's the whole goal here. Your goal, of course, at school is to, get good grades, have a good experience, all that good stuff. But ultimately, the goal at the end of the line is to come out with a job, and along the way to have some of those professional internship experiences too. So what we're going to focus on today is, like I said, succeeding at a career fair. So before we jump in, for our 10 or so participants, could you guys go ahead and put in the chat what grade you guys are in? Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? Go ahead and just throw it in the chat here quickly. Okay. I'm actually not able to see the chat. I'm not able to see because I'm sharing. Is there anyone going? Has anyone typed, or are you going to leave me hanging?
Yeah, it looks like we've got, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, can someone moderate it for me?
Yeah, 5 or 6 freshmen, 3 sophomores, and then a junior.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. And thank you all for jumping in and including that in the chat. That helps me figure out where we're all at and kind of gear it towards where you guys are all at individually. So there's 3 steps to succeeding at a career fair, especially in a virtual setting. And we'll kind of talk about the nuances for that as well. The first is you have to understand the expectations. There's no way you can do well at something if you don't know what's expected of you and if you have no idea what you're walking into. So what we'll go through here under the expectations, we'll start with appearance. This one should be pretty straightforward for all of you. So you're going to want to have a clean professional appearance and a clean background. Now, I know the world's kind of a crazy place right now. Your background might be a dorm room. It might be your kitchen table at home. It might be a library, wherever you are. Just make sure that it's organized, that you don't have anything you don't want seen in the back, but don't worry about it showing anything personal or anything like that. In fact, that's not an issue at all. And everyone understands, especially recruiters, the world that we're operating in. But so like I said, just want to make sure that it's professional and clean, it's tidy, there's no cereal bowls or anything in the background. So before you jump on with a recruiter, go ahead and do that. On Zoom, you can preview your background. Go ahead and do that for one quick view, just as a last minute check. The next is going to be your body language. So this is important in real life when you're face to face as well, but you'll see it's even more important, at least in my opinion, in a virtual world. So in a virtual world, a lot of the small things, a lot of those little things can get lost. You know, everyone knows if you're standing and talking to someone in person, don't have your arms crossed, you know, and don't look like this. But it's the same thing when you're in a virtual setting. And in fact, a lot of your gestures are going to want to be even a little bit more accentuated, even potentially. So first and foremost, you're going to want to look in the camera and not at you. So you'll see I'm looking over here right now, but my camera's actually right here. If they're close, it's not a huge deal, but it's definitely a good practice. It just connects more. It does that eye contact, even though you're through a screen. So that's the first one. The second is you're going to want to sit upright. So don't be slouching, don't have your hand on your cheek, all that good stuff. You already know that. Think about what would you do in class if you were front row and a professor was looking at you? You wouldn't want to be sitting there like that, half asleep. The other ones are a little bit smaller for body language cues. So lean in. It's the same thing when you're in person. I'm not sure if you'll know this, you might not, but when you lean in, it actually gives the appearance of being more engaged. And humans are kind of weird, but usually people will lean in return and it becomes a more intimate conversation. So it creates more of that connection and honestly kind of a bond that you're looking to build really quickly with those recruiters, even though it's through a screen. In addition to that, as they're talking, you're going to want to nod along, do gestures, just different things to show that you're engaged, you're paying attention, you're not just sitting on the line, you know, again, half asleep or anything like that. So that's that. And then the last piece of the body language that I think is honestly the most important is smile when you're talking, whether you're on video camera or not. So sometimes you're going to come across situations where maybe your video isn't working, or maybe the recruiter's isn't, your Wi-Fi is slow, or whatever the case might be. Again, it's a weird world, things happen, but you can hear how people talk and hear their excitement, even if you can't see them. So if I'm talking to you like this and I'm not smiling, it doesn't sound very exciting. Now, even if it's covered, when I talk like this and you're smiling when you talk, you sound more excited even if they can't see you. So just a tip, I find that just like in the real life, when you see someone smiling, you can also hear it. So a little bit about the body language. The last piece of, you know, kind of getting ready for those expectations, preparing for what's to come, is the communication. So verbal and written communication are key. I'm sure I don't need to harp that point on you guys, but especially in the world that we're operating in, being able to speak clearly, speak with, you know, enthusiasm, with passion, convey your messages verbally, but also in a written manner is really, really critical. So definitely something you want to be aware of. And with that, you know, of course, keep your language professional, be excited. You know, I catch myself using the word like a lot, or you know, maybe try to prepare for that and, you know, maybe notice it in yourself and potentially try to cut some of those out. It's something that I definitely work on. I'm from California. I think I grew up using the word like more than anything. So just to be prepared for that and kind of aware of what your language sounds like. Of course, same thing if anyone, say you're doing your interview in your dorm room, make sure your roommate or whoever it might be knows that you're in there. You need it to be a private space, so they're not walking in or they're not coming in on the phone or anything. So that's just a little bit of the expectations at a very high level. Are there any questions on this piece? Now, again, Ben, Ray, PESC team, I can't see the chat because I'm sharing my screen. So if anyone chats anything, let me know. But are there any questions? Feel free to come off of mute if so.
I'll let you know if I see any questions in the chat, but so far we've got nothing.
Awesome. Okay.
Here's the question. Nick asks, how can you hide nervousness?
Okay. So it's very reasonable to be nervous. In fact, we don't really hold that against people as recruiters. I spent about a year recruiting people all throughout the country, and nervousness to a degree is not a bad thing. Now, if you're very nervous and you know, you're shaking or you can't think or form words and sentences, you're not coherent, that's where you definitely want to prepare for that, practice. We'll talk a little bit about that preparation piece so that you can get rid of those nerves. But say you get online and all of a sudden it hits you. Sometimes you can't really avoid that. The good thing is, through a screen, nerves actually can sometimes come across as excitement. So if there's that, don't psych yourself out. Don't think I'm nervous. They're going to tell and start, digging even deeper in that hole. They probably can't tell. And then again, it goes back to those body language cues. And in addition to that, there's nothing wrong with saying, if you stutter or if you start, you lose your train of thought, there's nothing wrong with kind of laughing it off. And you can even acknowledge, this is one of my first times interviewing virtually. I'm working through the systems. I'm a little bit nervous, and honestly, they're working in the exact same environment. So you can play it off. That's the best way to go about it. Don't psych yourself out and think that it's the end of the line or anything, because it really isn't. Anything else for this piece?
So far, that's it. Thank you for that answer.
Awesome. Okay, the next piece, and definitely probably one of the more important ones, is the preparation. So tying into that nerves question, a lot of that can be negated by preparing. And even if you don't get nerves, even if that isn't something that you really struggle with, it's always good to prepare. So the first step I always say is go ahead and reflect for about 30 minutes. Don't laugh that one off. I know it sounds a little bit, kind of cheesy or anything like that, but really, I really encourage you to spend 30 minutes and think about who you are, what do you do, and why do you do it? Those are the main things that I encourage people to start with, because it's going to guide the different companies you go to talk to. It's going to guide how those conversations go. It's going to guide the mood that you have as you enter these virtual spaces. So really think about those and kind of dwell on them for a couple of minutes and figure that out. In addition to that, sit and kind of think about, okay, what do you want from the summer? And the opposite of that, what don't you want from this summer? Now, there's a couple of names that we all know. They're big names, and you might be thinking, oh, well, I want that because it's a big name. But, really pause and think, does that program align with what I want from the summer? Maybe you want operations experience. Maybe you want something in healthcare. Maybe you want to do robotics. Whatever it might be, try to figure out what you want from that program. And then also think about it from the personal aspect. Are you looking for a program that really emphasizes mentorship or leadership? Is there a program that you're looking for that might help you work on your public speaking? It might be more of a customer side role or customer facing role. Think about things like that, because it's going to help guide the different roles you're looking for. And in addition to that, in that reflection, grades are obviously important. Like I said at the very start, we want you to be doing well, for sure. But past that, what do you bring to the table? Everyone has grades, and most people are going to have grades in about the same range. But the thing is, you could have a 4.0, but if that's all you bring to the table, you might not actually be as competitive as someone who has, a 2.7, a 3, a 3.3, anything, but they have these experiences or they have a passion. They know what they're looking for, why they do it, and they have experience in that realm. So really think about that. It can be anything from an organization you're a part of, through something you did over the summer, to previous internship experiences if you're one of the sophomores or the junior. And if you don't have internship experience, like I would assume the majority of people on this call don't, think about the other things you bring to the table, your different skills, and talk about those softer skills. You might not see it because when you're in school, it seems like everything is about the classes, everything is about the grades, but really soft skills are equally important. Your passions are important. And just letting the things that make you unique and the things that differentiate you shine is going to be really, really key in that preparation, and then also in the actual career fair. In addition to that, obviously you should be doing some research. So plan out the day based on what you reflected on, based on what you're looking for, and all of that good stuff. Plan out your day and plan out the companies that you want to speak to. When you're all in person and, say, well, actually, I don't even think IR was on campus this year, but in the past, you've had the opportunity for the sophomores and juniors to potentially be in person, and you can just hop around and jump in line. Virtual career fairs don't really work the same way. In fact, it might seem like you have more time, but in a lot of ways you might not. There's longer queues sometimes, and they're usually shorter windows for career fairs. So really plan out your day and figure out what are the 5 to 10 companies that you are determined to speak with, and then make it happen, make a plan for it. In addition to that, so that you don't come completely unprepared, you're gonna wanna spend, I say 5 to 10 minutes, but that would probably be a minimum for each company on research for them. So companies, especially if they're larger and even if they're smaller, they have things going on constantly. And the quickest way to show that you're interested, you're up to date, and you didn't just hop in the queue because you had nothing else to do, is to know that research and come prepared with some of the things. It might be a news article. It might just be something that you've heard about. It might be whatever you see, whatever you feel like connecting, but spend that time getting a little bit familiar with their company and getting up to date with them. In addition to that, something that's really key and you can always hit on is the culture. People are at a company not because usually they like the work, that's fine, but people stick at a company because they like the company that they work for, and they like the people they work with, they like the culture. So one thing I always say is when you're doing that research, try to find their mission statement, their goals, and what their culture is like, because people are going to love to talk to you about that. And it's also really important for you to see. So for the preparation piece, are there any questions on that?
We do not have any questions yet.
All right, we're flying. Okay, the last piece, of course, so you've figured out the expectations, you've prepared, you are good to go. You've got, your, well, even if you're in sweatpants, you have a nice, business professional top on, you're ready to go. You've got your notes, you've signed up for all the different booths you want to go to. That's great. The last piece is obviously actually interacting with the folks. It's showing up and doing the actual career fair part. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about this piece as well. So with that, the first thing that I know you guys have all heard about, and if you haven't, we definitely want to spend a little bit of time here on, is the infamous elevator pitch. The elevator pitch can really intimidate people, but it really, really is not as complicated or as scary as it might seem. So the elevator pitch can be summed into about 6 different parts. Well, 5 that people usually talk about, and the 6th I always add. So of course, you're going to want to start with your name. You would be surprised how many people forget that. You get a little nervous and you forget your name. No worries, but you'll want to start with your name. Of course, your major, your year, the goal of talking with the recruiter. So a lot of companies are going to have multiple different roles that they're offering. They might have internships, they might have co-ops, they might have full-time opportunities, and they're going to be there for different reasons. So you're going to want to state, I'm a junior in industrial engineering and I'm seeking an internship for this upcoming summer, or I'm a freshman seeking, so on and so forth, a co-op for the next 3 terms, or whatever it might be. Make sure you state that too, so that you don't get all the way to the end and realize that they're only hiring full-time and you're a freshman. So you're not exactly super qualified for a full-time role. It saves your time, it saves them some time too. In addition to that, you're going to want to talk about your experiences. And so that can look like, if you're a freshman, you probably don't have internship experience. That can be those organizations you're a part of or that you just joined. That can be things that you're involved with outside of Purdue or at Purdue, either way, things that you're passionate about. It might be Relay for Life. Maybe you did, dance marathon, PUDM, dance marathon, and that was something really important to you. That's experience. So that, you can use that as fundraising experience, whatever it is. It doesn't have to just be a professional internship. There's a world of experience out there outside of that. And then lastly, why you? So this piece goes back to the differentiation part. Ultimately, they're going to meet a lot of different people. So you want to make it very clear why you should be the person that they pick and why you feel like you align with the role that you're looking at and talking to them about. In addition to that, I think one of the parts that scares people most about the elevator pitch is the transition after. So you've spent the 30 seconds, you've introduced yourself, and then people freeze and they go, now what? Don't do that. The transition does not have to be this big, grand, elaborate thing. Usually how I do it and how I've seen a lot of students really successfully do that when I've interviewed them or talked to them at booths is something as simple as, so of course, that is a little bit about me at a very high level, but I would love to walk you through my resume if you have the time and talk to you a little bit about how my skills and my experiences align with the role that XYZ, the company, is looking for. So something as simple as that. It's one sentence, and then you can from there start talking to them a little bit more in depth about who you are. But like I said, don't let that transition throw you off. Just roll with it. If they jump in your elevator pitch, maybe you were in the same organization, don't panic and don't just jump back, don't answer their question and just instead stick to the elevator pitch. Don't do that. Say you mentioned that you're on PESC, and I might, as the recruiter, go, oh, I was on PESC. That's great. You don't have to keep going with your elevator pitch. You can pick back up later if you want to, but use that moment to connect with them. Don't let that panic you, but ultimately recruiters are people too. It's something that I always say, recruiters are people, and it should be a conversation. So in fact, it's a really good thing if your elevator pitch might get interrupted for something like that. It usually means that there's a connection somewhere in there. After that, of course, you've done your elevator pitch, you've navigated that transition. Now's the conversation. So the biggest thing is just be authentic, especially as a freshman or a sophomore or even a junior. Don't try to be something that you're not. Don't try to boost or bolster or sometimes I've seen people even flat out talk about things that aren't necessarily true. Don't do that. What we want to see is we want to see you. We want to see what you care about. We want to know that you're being truthful with us, because think about it. Is there anything you like less than feeling like you're being sold on something and you feel like you're being lied to or anything like that? Of course not. None of us like that, especially in this situation. You wouldn't like it if a recruiter did the same thing to you. So really be authentic, let your real self show. In addition to that, people get a little bit of a glow when they talk about things that they're caring about, that are close to their heart. So with that, I always mention, focus on 2 meaningful experiences in depth. As younger students, as underclassmen, it can be really easy to start just rattling off everything that you do. I do this, and this, and this, and then on the weekends I do this and that and this. Instead of that, go ahead and focus on 2 experiences that are really important to you and really anchor to those in depth as you talk. Think about, again, we'll use PUDM as an example. If that's something that you showed, maybe leadership, or maybe you showed the ability to manage funds or do a customer kind of aspect where you raised money, or maybe you organized panels, whatever it might be, focus on those a little bit more in depth rather than just a laundry list of things that might not be as important to you or you might not be as involved with. So there's that. And then lastly, and this one is huge, and I'm telling you right now, 90% of people will do everything up to this, but they won't do this. And this is what's going to set you apart. It's asking for what you want, whether that's at the career fair booth and it's asking for an interview, whether that's in the interview and expressing and asking to be considered for that job, do it. It's the same thing if you've ever been in a sales role or if you're ever interested in sales. You can't get what you don't ask for. And recruiters want to see that you want the role, that you're interested, and ultimately, the clearest and most direct way to do that is to state it. So it can go something along the lines, say you're in the interview of, well, thank you so much for your time today and all of the information you shared. based on our conversation, I hope you can tell that, my skills and my experiences, can set me up for success in this role. But even above that, I hope you can just tell that, I would be excited and really appreciative of the opportunity to work with XYZ this summer. I hope you consider me. That's it. It's nothing huge, but ask for it. State it very clearly that you're interested and you want this opportunity. The very last thing, these ones are a little bit more just checkbox things, the follow-up. So get their business card. The only way you can, write them an email or potentially find them on LinkedIn is if you know their name and their contact, especially when you're in these interviews or you're talking to them at the booth, whatever it might be. It's really easy to forget someone's name. I've done it on both sides. I've forgotten the people that interviewed me's name, and it's going to happen. So the easiest way to avoid that, make sure you get their business card. It also shows that you're interested and you're going to follow up. Like I just mentioned a little bit with that, after you have those cards, write them a meaningful email after. I'm not talking an essay, and I'm not talking one line that just says, thanks for the day. Write something and pick something out that maybe they shared and repeat it back to them. If they talked a lot about the culture, explain to them why that culture aligns with what you're looking for. If you asked a question and they gave a really good answer that you had never thought about or that you wanted to know, mention that in the email. Make it that personal connection again, and it will go a lot further than just a simple, thanks for your time today. And then again, in that, ask for what you want. Reiterate the point that you're excited about this opportunity and you're really looking forward to talking to them more and hearing back from them. You'd really appreciate this, XYZ possibility. And then the very last piece that we'll talk about today, and one that I absolutely love when students will do, when they do this, is ask for feedback. I promise you, when you get into the real world, it's one of the things on every single report, every single performance report you'll be judged on is, do you ask for feedback and do you take it? I promise this will go so far. You get to the end of that interview or at the career fair and ask them for feedback, whether it's on your elevator pitch, whether it's on your experience. Maybe it's your resume. Maybe you just want to know what they think of your resume. Just asking for that feedback shows that you're someone who wants to work with people, you value someone's opinions, and you work well with others. So that was a ton of information, I know, in 30 minutes, but are there any questions? I know we don't have a ton of time here, but is there anything in the chat, or feel free to come off of mute?
Yeah, we have one question asking about what would be the equivalent of asking for someone's business card on a virtual career fair?
So for that's actually a good question. So what you would do in that case is ask for their contact information, and you don't have to say like, what's your phone number? Don't do that. But I'd love to follow up with you, or I'd love to connect again. Would you mind if I get your email? And I promise they'll give it to you. So their email, and then from that, make note. If it's on Zoom, if that's the platform, great. Write down their name with it. If they do give out their phone number, so for instance, I did because it was on my business card, I gave it out. You can ask that too. But basically, just frame it as, I'd love to connect. Is there a method, or is there a means? Do you have an email that works best for you? And just get it that way. That's a really good question.
We have one more question here. Nick asks, could we use these pointers for interviews that are not career fairs, meaning that you're in the next stage of the recruitment process? How does that apply?
Absolutely, especially this execution pitch, or not execution pitch, execution piece is completely applicable for the interviews. And in fact, a lot of it is. In fact, a lot of your interviews will probably be virtual as well, because the world we're in, it goes this exact same. So the expectations, the preparation can be a little bit different. Oh, I think I'm getting kicked off, so it might just have to be my voice now. But a lot of it's going to be the same. So whether it's asking for what you want, like I said, express to them in that interview that you're looking to be considered for this job, or phrases like, talking to them and really reiterating how you personally align with that role or the company. A lot of people are really good, especially at the career fair booth. It's a lot more high level, and they do a good job of explaining themselves and their experiences, and they do a good job of listening to what the person says about the company. But what people don't often do, and what they absolutely in an interview absolutely need to do, is make the connection between those two things. The connection between who you are, who the company is, and why it's a good pair. So to answer the question, basically all of this is going to apply, but in that interview, it's going to be a little bit more detailed. And that's where you're going to want to make, like I just said, that connection to why you. Does that answer the question? Hopefully.
I mean, I believe it does. I personally, oh, Nick says yes, thank you. I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot.
Yeah, no problem. I love doing this. And, in addition, I'll share with you guys my email. For any of the students here, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer or help you as you prepare for these career fairs. I know that they can be a little bit of a daunting task, so feel free to reach out. My email is just my first and last name at ups.com. So Sydney Johnson at ups.com. Again, I'm on a little bit of a weird schedule right now, working with the vaccines at the moment, but I promise I will get back to you. And really, I'll leave you with the note that you guys you're all great. You're Purdue engineers, you're Purdue students. And the fact that you jumped on this call to learn about how to get ready is that first step to success. So just know your value, and any company would be lucky to have any of you guys. So that's my last bit. Is there anything else, Ben, Ray, anyone?
I think that is it, but that was an awesome presentation.
Wow.
Thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm sure everyone appreciated it.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I'll go ahead and hop off. Have a great time with, I think the CCO's next, okay?
Yes.
Bye all.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
Raymond, do you want me to jump into it, or do you have an introduction first?
If you have your own introduction, then go ahead and get right into it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Allison Beeland. I'm from the Center for Career Opportunities. Hopefully a handful of you on the call have visited us. We are in Young Hall 132. You can currently visit us in person, or you can meet with us virtually online. Majority of our services have been moved to virtual to accommodate those who are remote this semester, or those who would just prefer to meet remote. Today, I have the pleasure of presenting resumes to you, and my hope is that although I have about 20 minutes or so, 25 with you, that you have a good grasp on the concept of resumes, and then once you go into having that resume review after today, you can get some critiques on your current document. So, Raymond, do I have screen sharing privileges if I were to go ahead and do that?
I believe you do, yes.
Okay, awesome. Can you give me a thumbs up if you see my screen?
Yeah,
okay,
good.
Awesome. And if I present, can you still see my screen? Okay,
yep.
Awesome. All righty, so we are just going to jump right into it. As you have questions or think of them, feel free to throw those in the chat during this presentation, and then I'll leave about 5 minutes at the end to answer those questions. So the first question I have for everyone on the call, and if someone would like to monitor the chat, I'd love to hear your responses, but I'd like to know, how many seconds do you think the average employer spends looking at a resume? Any guesses? All right. Raymond, do you want to tell me a few of the answers that are popping up in there?
Yeah, Patrick or Zach, do you guys want to, I don't think she can see the chat. So if you guys want to relay those answers.
Yeah, definitely. So we have 7, a couple of 10s, 60 seconds, 15, 20, 15, and 5.
Okay, awesome. Those are all really good guesses. Whoever answered 7 is the correct answer. So the average amount of seconds that an employer looks at a resume is 7. So the information that we're sharing today gets to those nitty-gritty details that we need to make sure is very clear to an employer because of the average amount of seconds that an employer is looking at that document. The main reason it's only 7 seconds is because the amount of applications they're looking through is quite a bit, and it depends on the job and how in high demand that position is and how popular it is as well. So just keep in mind that the average amount of seconds is 7, and so you want to make sure that that document is very clear cut and ready to be viewed by an employer. So we're going to jump into some resume realities. So this is encompassing all resumes. So your resume, everything on it should be true. There shouldn't be anything on your resume that indicates something that is upcoming or something that you will do in the future. Everything from today and into the past is what should be on your resume. Okay. Also, resumes are subjective. So this means that you're in charge. My resume, I have a master's degree, is likely going to look different from someone on this call today who has a bachelor's degree. Because a master's degree, you can have 2 pages, whereas a resume that is a bachelor's degree is 1 page. So just know that you're in charge of structuring the document. You're in charge of putting what you want on it. I will showcase to you some of the things that are going to be very similar on each resume, such as your contact and education, but know that the way you structure it is ultimately up to you. Your resume should also be tailored to the position that you're applying to. So quite often I will meet with students who say, Allison, I have applied to 20 plus jobs. Nothing's working out. I can't get an interview. What's going on? And I typically ask them, okay, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about your strategy? Have you been tailoring your resume to what you're applying to? And normally the question is, what do you mean by tailoring? What that means is you're looking through the job description and you're looking for those keywords or skill sets or languages, technical skills, whatever it is that they are looking for. And you're ensuring that your resume has those things that they are talking about. What that doesn't mean is to take things on a job description and just plug it into your resume if it's not true. That's not what I'm saying. You want to make sure that you are taking what is on that job description and you're saying, okay, have I done this? Yes or no? Doing a gut check and then ensuring, okay, if I have done this, let's make sure that I include that organization, communication, time management skill, whatever it is on that resume. Okay. And then lastly, the skills on your resume are going to be either scientific and or transferable. And a transferable skill is really a skill that you gained within an experience. So it could be a volunteer experience, a part-time job, a co-op, an internship, and it's related to what you would be applying to. So you gain that skill and that experience at that time, and you are taking that skill with you into your next position that you're applying to. Okay, and that's what an employer will be looking for. So what are the top 5 skills employers are seeking? This is according to NACE's Job Outlook survey. The first one is the ability to communicate with people inside and outside of an organization. And everyone on this call has likely done this, whether you've been in a group project, you've had an internship, a part-time job, you've worked with people different from who you are. So you've worked and communicated with them. The second thing is the ability to work in a team structure. And if you've had any sort of projects, you've likely hit that one right away. This shows that you can work with people on projects that an employer will give you in the future, but also can you work independently and contribute that piece or that project that you were working on to the group so it can contribute to the goal that that project is trying to meet. The next one is ability to make decisions and problem solve. If anyone's taken a class at this point, you've definitely done that. Any sort of design projects or any sort of projects you've done in a class, the result statement for one of your bullet points could talk about the problem that you were looking to solve. And I'll show you how to have those endings on your bullet points. Number 4 is ability to plan, organize, and prioritize work. And the number 5 is the ability to obtain and process information. So what I typically do is give students the top 5, and then I have a question, where have you used these skill sets? And if you have used these, how have you incorporated those on your resume? I'm happy to share this presentation with Raymond or whoever else would like it after the call if you'd like to have this for your records as well. But just ask yourself these questions as you look through your resume and ask yourself if you've incorporated these. All right, so some resume do's and don'ts. So quite often I meet with students, the first thing they do when they pull up their resume, I can tell it's a template. And quite often employers can tell that too. Templates are not bad, but what we do is encourage you to not necessarily use one because it causes you to conform to the set of standards that are in that document. So you can't manipulate the material the way you might like, such as stretching your margins, maybe putting your location in a place instead of your dates that you did the experience. You can't manipulate it the way that you can a regular Microsoft Word document. So what we recommend is to recreate the format, pull up a regular Word doc and take the info that you had in that template and put it into a regular Microsoft Word document. You can create text boxes in that document. You can recreate the format. You get to choose how you manipulate the material. We also talk about balancing space. So sometimes on a template, you've got these odd white pockets on your resume, and that looks a little weird to an employer because it looks like something might be missing. Instead, we want you to balance the white space on your resume, and I'll show you a sample of how to do that. And then lastly, references. We recommend that your resume is just your resume. Your references list will be a completely separate document. And quite often, an employer will ask for that once you've gotten past that first round interview. If they do conduct second rounds and you're in the finalist round, let's say there's 3 people, they will reach out and say, please send us your references, and then they'll contact them. So let's just make sure that your resume is your resume, a references list is separate, similar to a cover letter being completely separate for all 3 different documents. So resume format. Likely everyone on this call has a resume of some sort. This one is just a template or I'll say a sample since it's not really a template for today's call. But know that you'll see at the top of the resume, the first thing is the individual's name, followed by a location, appropriate contact information such as email and phone number. There's a variety of different ways that you can structure this. Ultimately, you want to make sure that the way that you have it structured on your resume is the same format that you use on your cover letter. Those 2 documents should mirror each other. So the same contact information on the resume is the same on the cover letter. Make sure it's visible. So likely you'll want your name a little bit larger than everything else so they know you. And then an appropriate email address. Everyone on this call, you can use your Purdue email. If you have an appropriate Gmail address, that's also fine. What we want to do is stay away from anything that looks not professional. I've met with students whose email address has been puppylover62@gmail.com. I've seen everything. That's been crazy. As much as I love that email address and I love puppies, likely the employer looking at that will probably question, okay, have they not had time to make a new email address? Do they not know that it's probably not most appropriate? What's going on here? So that might look a little fishy to an employer. So I would recommend everyone just use your regular email address or Purdue or an appropriate Gmail. The margins here recommend 0.8 to 1 on the top, and then the bottom and side 0.5 to 1. What I will say is the more info that you have on your resume, if you follow these guidelines, you will start to notice that you run out of space to put everything on your resume that you want. So I'm a little more generous, I will say, and I like to stretch those margins a little bit more. So you don't have to follow this completely. What you will want to do is a self-check. So if you're questioning if a PDF version of your resume will cut off anything on your resume when you save it that way, do a test. So save it as a Word doc. After you've pulled those margins, also save it as a PDF, pull it up, and then look at the document as a whole and see if any of the words were cut off. The reason I want you to do that is because if you were to submit it through a job application site, whether it's Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, however you're applying, if that employer pulls up that PDF and sees anything cut off on your resume, it may seem alarming to them, and they won't be able to see the full bullet point or whatever it is that's being cut off. So just take a look at that. And then lastly, font type and size. 10 to 12 is what we recommend. Your name can be a little bit bigger on your resume, but we don't want to use any fonts that are out of the ordinary. So what I typically tell students is basic is okay. Use that font type that's the most common and that is most readable amongst other Microsoft Word programs on anyone's computer. So if you were to use a different type of font, and let's say an employer pulls it up on their computer. They notice that that font is not readable on their own computer for some reason. It's going to look funky, and they're just going to put that resume aside and not look at it. So just make sure you're using a font that's very basic. Okay. Resume content, the couple things you'll see here, I've highlighted contact information and education. This will be consistent with everyone's resume on the call today. What will look a little different is the way you have your content structured. So the first thing will be contact information, like I showed you on the prior page, followed by your education, and then everything below that is up to you to decide how you structure that. I will say there isn't a right or wrong way to structure it. What I will say is structure your resume according to the job that you're applying to. So if you're applying to a job and they're looking for someone with high technical skills, you may choose to put a skills section directly after your education, followed by any internships, co-ops, part-time jobs, etc. If you are on this call and you're not in a technical major necessarily, you may choose to put the skills section at the bottom of the resume because you have more internship and co-op experience that you want to highlight higher up on your resume. So it's really up to you how you choose to structure that. What I wanted to do on this page is give you an idea to start brainstorming how you might want to structure your resume if you are having difficulty coming up with section titles. So these are some to consider. All right, core 4, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you, so I'm happy to answer those questions at the end because I know this is quite a bit. The core 4 is what I work with students on because although they have the bullet points on their resume, they don't always have these 4 pieces of information so the employer knows exactly where you did the experience. So these should be for each experience, whether it's part-time, volunteer work, internships, co-ops, any sort of experience. So the first thing you'll want is the name of the employer or organization. And you'll see my little green arrow says Hormel Foods. That's the name of the employer in this scenario. The position / title is number 2. I have that circled there, production management intern. So you've got the employer's name followed by the title that you had within that experience for that employer. The third thing is location of employer. So where was that experience? We've got that there with the blue arrow. And then lastly, dates of employment and experience. So when did you do this experience? I've seen everything from, day or month, year, dash month, year. I've seen just a year that students put on. I see students use numbers to indicate months instead of actually writing out the months. Those 2 options are fine, but what we want to do is stay away from just putting a generic year. So if you are a freshman on this call and you still have things from high school on your resume, that's completely fine just because of the status that you're at in college. But what I would say is try to stay away from putting just 2016 or 2017 on your resume. Try to stick with that month, year, dash month, year format. That allows the employer to know how long that experience was. I've also worked with students who did some sort of project over the summer. COVID took away their internship. They weren't able to do it. And so they did some sort of project, like a micro internship, but it was a very short amount of time. If that was 3 weeks worth, go ahead for that date section and just put June 2020, and that will indicate that you did it during that month. Those are a couple examples. Biggest thing to keep in mind is that you want consistency on your resume. So if you are bolding the employer's name, make sure they're bolded throughout the entire resume. If you're italicizing your title, ensure that it's italicized throughout the entire document, etc. We're going to move on to power statements and bullet points. So this is the meat of your resume. This indicates to the employer what you did in that experience. And quite often, students will have the first 2 parts of the bullet point, and that's a good place to start, but we really need to bring that bullet point full circle so we complete it. The first part of the bullet point is the power verb. So this is going to be collaborated, communicated, designed, etc. That's how you start your bullet point. It's normally followed by a task, and you don't have to think too hard about this because typically you'll start with collaborated with team members during X class, that's your task. And then the last part is either a purpose, method, or result ending. and you get to choose one of the 3 endings for this bullet point. This is going to indicate to an employer the impact of why you did what you did. I worked with a student today who had thought they had to incorporate all 3, purpose, method, and result, into one bullet point. That bullet point will likely be about 3 lines worth, and that's way too long. So we want to stay away from that. So you'll just want to choose 1, 2, or 3, purpose, method, or result. So I'm going to go to the next page and show you how I have an example for each of these, and it'll help you see how to structure a purpose, a method, and a result bullet point. So the first one is a purpose bullet point. So I have collaborated with Purdue campus partners during the resource fair in order to promote the Center for Career Opportunity Services. So this is what I do. I'm a career consultant. I give presentations. I tell students about what we have to offer. So this is my purpose statement bullet point. A method statement bullet point is talking about using some sort of resource or tool. So this one is critiqued college student resumes using the CCO Career Planning Handbook. So if you have used Python or C++ or any sort of tool, any sort of resource within your classes that helped you accomplish a goal, put that in that bullet point so that the employer can look at it in your skills section, but also see where you use that in your experience. And then lastly, an example of a result bullet point: communicated with undergraduate students during CCO drop-in hours, which they're now called our quick chat hours. We changed the name, resulting in a 10% increase in CCO services utilized during the academic year. So this is a numeric value. So whether it's a percentage or a number, this indicates something very specific to an employer so that they can measure that. So again, you get to choose. There isn't a standard. You need to have this many purpose, this many method, and this many result endings, that there isn't any sort of standard that you have to meet there. It really comes down to showcasing to the employer what you did so it shows impact. These are a couple more examples. I won't read through all of them for sake of time, but just know that anything in red is a purpose statement, purple is a method statement, and then result is anything in green. So it showcases percentages or numbers. And this is just a resume self-check. So once you get to the end of your resume, these are a couple things to ask yourself. Are any relevant skills represented? Have you indicated what skill sets you have gained during your Purdue education? Are those on your resume? The next check, have I included all of my relevant experiences? And relevant doesn't just mean internships. Relevant means any sort of experience you did where you gained a skill, and that's going to help you do that job to the best of your ability. Okay. The next one, have I shown results or impact on an organization? That's the end of that bullet point. So go through and double check that you have that impact on at the end of each of those bullet points. Have I used action skills or verbs? Just make sure that the start of your bullet point has those verbs. Have I listed most important first? And again, you may have 5 different styles of your resume according to how you structure it and how you're using it to apply to very targeted positions. And then lastly, does it fit the position? So looking through that job description, asking yourself, is what's on my document relevant to what they're looking for in a qualified candidate? The last plug I'll mention here, it's a great resource. If anyone has not used this, I highly recommend it. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. It's called VMOC. It's an artificial intelligence tool, and we just brought this on our staff, I believe February of 2020, and then COVID hit and students didn't learn about it as much because we weren't on campus. We had to, transition to remote work, and so we wanted to push this tool out a lot more. So we're trying to let students know more about it. But really what you do is you create an account, you can use your Purdue credentials, and then you plug your resume into the system. It will do a deep dive on your document. So it's going to tell you every little thing that they suggest that you change, down to the spacing on your resume. It'll also look at, have you used words more than 3 times on your resume? So if you used collaborated 5 times, it's going to highlight that and say, consider changing the word. Or if something was spelled incorrectly, it's going to look at that. I put my resume in, and with a master's level, I thought I had my resume perfected. It caught probably 20 errors on it, whether it was spacing, margins. It had a couple things that pointed out to me that I didn't even think about changing. So they say by putting it in about 3 times after you've made those changes, your resume score will go up about 25 points. And some instructors use this as an assignment. So take a look at it. What's nice is you can use it after hours. So if you aren't setting up an appointment with us during quick chats, you can use this resource instead. All right. So that is my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and then answer any questions that may have come through the chat while I was presenting.
I don't see any questions in the chat so far. Patrick or Zach, do you see?
No, I'm not getting any questions there.
Okay.
And I know I flew through things, so if there's something that needs to be clarified, I'm happy to do that while we're on the call today. Biggest thing I will plug for anyone that hasn't utilized it, our quick chat services are Monday through Friday, 1 to 4 p.m. We do express resume reviews, and I know after this call, there's a roundtable where students have about 5 minutes with a member of our CCO staff to look at your resume. If you have more questions after that meeting with one of the peer consultants today, please set up a quick chat so that we can do a deeper dive on your resume and provide that extra assistance. We'd be happy to help you.
We actually do have one quick question there. Someone popped in. So Ben asked, so even if you will learn a skill by the time you start the position you're applying for, you should not include it on the resume? So that's, I guess he's saying if you are expecting to get a certain skill by a certain time, should you put that on or not?
So I would recommend if you do put it on there, put in parentheses in progress or taking this semester, something like that. The employer needs to know that you're not completely well-adversed or proficient in it right away. And if that's what they're looking for in a candidate, then they need to know up front that that's something you have just started learning, especially if you just started your classes this semester and you were just introduced to it.
Awesome. Thank you. And Ben said, thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think that's all the other questions we had. Thank you so much for, oh, we have one more. Jen asked, could you explain how we can access VMOC again?
Yeah, let me grab the link really quick and I'll put it in the chat for everyone. Give me 1 second.
I might be wrong, but is there a limited number of times you can submit or upload a resume to VMOC? I think it's like 10.
Yeah, I believe it's 10, but I will say you won't need the full 10 amount just because if you're looking at the feedback they're giving you on the resume and you're really looking through that, taking about 15-20 minutes editing the document and then putting it back in, you shouldn't need that full 10 times. Yep,
I mean, honestly, as something else I'll just throw in there. I personally use VMOC a bunch. I used it I think 4 or 5 times on my resume, and it made a world of difference. I mean, before I even sent it to any, of my peers, parents, former employers, things like that, to look at, just to kind of give me more feedback, VMOC was a fantastic tool to really refine it.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
So I think that is all the questions we have. Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah,
Ray, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to mention.
Yeah, if that's all for the questions that we have, then I think we're about out of time. So like Zach said, thank you, Allison, so much for volunteering to do this. I know it was kind of last minute. You found out Rose couldn't. But again, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. And visit the CCO when you get a chance.
Yep.
Awesome.
And be sure to come to our other interactive sessions that are after this. Those are linked on the website.
Yes.
Have a good night, everyone.
As well.
Thank you. Good night.
You as well.